Funnels of Brazil, Book 2, Life After Hell, Chapter 8, Tachi and Sheila. 2 weeks I was already living with Tachi and Sheila. The purchases were divided fairly. I didn't need to worry about something being stolen from me because the two had plenty of their own stuff and cigarettes as well. Above all, they accepted me as I was, didn't ask too many questions as I didn't ask them. Apart from now and then a marriage dispute was due, from which I kept out. I felt pretty good with them. They gave up their bed for me. In Pavilion 4 were only cells with one bed, which meant that in some cases 2 or 3 women were sleeping on the floor in those small cells, depending on occupancy, telling me that they had more space to sleep together on the floor, and showed me in every other way that they honestly liked me. Claudia, however, seemed to be seriously worried about me, because I had indicated some intentions of suicide before. This she wrote in a letter to the director to get her permission for her move as well, so she could be near me and keep an eye on me. Because of this letter, I was summoned unexpectedly into Saúde to talk with a psychologist, who told me immediately that the order came of the director. I immediately took up my defenses and also denied the presence of an interpreter. I don't need a translator. I speak enough Portuguese to understand you, I sneered at the woman. At first this woman was unappealing to me, but she was very patient and took great efforts with me. Her opinion was that Claudia and I should be together in one cell, because we belonged to the same culture. But of this I no longer was so sure of. Several times during our conversation she tried to call the panel, but without success. Meanwhile I sat like a heap of misery before her, but why I wouldn't and couldn't tell her. Then a second psychologist, who already knew me from the time in the Stagio, entered the room and remembered me well. She asked if I was receiving letters of my children. Again I lost my composure and wept uncontrollably. She wanted to know if I was already sentenced. I told her I wasn't. Both of them were equally horrified by the fact that I was, after 1 year, still not sentenced. The second psychologist assured she would check on the web if some decision already existed. The first psychologist was going to take care in any case that I could move in with Claudia, and promised me to call me again the following Tuesday. When nothing happened on that Tuesday, I was almost relieved, because how should I have made it clear to Sheila and Tachi that I would move again, and how should I explain, on the other hand, to Claudia that I didn't want to move anymore? After my remaining doubts had dispelled concerning their intimate life, I had asked them if my presence would not be disturbing in this respect. They had replied, laughing, that they liked me very much, respected me as I respected them, and their intimate life took place when I slept, late at night or early in the morning. I saw no reason to move. Since a long time I managed once again to take care of important issues, and wrote a letter to Mrs. Bishop, of whom I heard nor saw nothing any more since our first visit in the PFC in February. I wrote again to the consulate to know at last what had become of my personal ad, and to inform them that I was back working. To my mother I wrote to thank her for the money she had sent. The most difficult letter I wrote at last, a birthday greeting to Michael. I didn't write much, because I didn't want to slip back into my depression. Only a few lines to show him that I thought of him, that I loved him very much. I asked him whether he would celebrate with his friends or his girlfriend, to show a little interest in his life. Again I asked him to respond to my letters. But I didn't even know if he received them at all. I was very broken-hearted at the thought that my child now spent the second birthday, his 15th, without me. The 25th of August, Michael's birthday, really was very bad for me. During work I was barely responsive, constantly thinking about my son, how he would spend this day, and whether he received my letter already. I continuously fought against my tears. Deeper than usual, I felt this inner pain about the break of our connection. Luckily, it was Friday and cleaning day, and I finished work at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. In the shower, I sobbed uncontrollably. It did still hurt as much as on the first day, and would probably never stop hurting so much. After showering, I took 3 tranquilizer pills, prescribed to me recently by the psychologist, got into bed and fell asleep quickly. I didn't want to be thinking any more on this day. Tachi and Sheila were seriously worried about me, even though I forewarned them in the morning that I was not in good mood. And why? However, when I was still asleep at 10 in the morning on Saturday, they had great fear and woke me gently. After coffee, I assured them that I was okay, even though I felt like I had been spit out of a grinder. At night, I sang and danced together with the two Baile Funky, electronic music from Rio de Janeiro. The show must go on. One Thursday morning, the cell doors were not opened. From minute to minute, I was getting more nervous, because the last few days had spread the rumor that Shoki would advance. When the guard came to the door to distribute drugs, Tachi asked why they wouldn't open the doors. She and Sheila had kitchen duty. Whispering, she just replied that we already knew why. Infinitely long, nothing at all happened. My anxiety grew. Tachi and Sheila tried to reassure me in a loving way. Don't worry, nothing will happen to you. We will look after you, Sheila said. And this they really did. First we heard the troops run up to the second floor, then the roar and the noise as they took apart the cells and threw out everything. Tachi was still standing at the door and watched with a small mirror what was going on in the corridor, and showed me that one of them stood guard in front of the showers. He appeared threatening in the full battle gear and the rifle at the ready. Endless long, nothing happened, but I already sat on the floor with my face down, sneering at Tachi and Sheila they should do the same, as we finally heard the command from outside. Cabezas abaixo! Heads down! I was trembling with fear. I stopped breathing while Sheila was caressing my arms, reassuring, and whispered to me, Don't worry. Tachi now sat in front of me, and behind me was Sheila on the floor when the cell door was opened. Sheila immediately told the men with downcast face that I was a foreigner and didn't understand anything. Despite my lowered head, I looked for the first time in my life into a gun barrel pointing at me. We had to leave the cell in a hurry, while Tachi remained as Donna de Sela, attending the search of the cell. They rushed us down the stairs, and I looked at the landings and down at every turn directly into the guns and at the masked men. Trembling with fear, I crouched on the floor as we were told. After a short time, Sheila pointed up with her hand to explain to the men that I was sick. Thus, I was permitted to sit on the bench together with the pregnant women and other sick ones. After hours, my prayers had been answered. Sheila and I were allowed to go up again, still with our heads down and hands in the neck. Although our cell looked a mess, but it wasn't as bad as I expected. The box with my clothes and my paperwork had not even been touched. By the early afternoon, we were done with the cleanup. With relief, the three of us fell around each other's neck. Above all, I thanked Sheila for taking care of me. Tachi played jokingly to be in a huff that she was the one suffering the most out of all, and described how she almost died from fear of the Rottweiler they had brought into the cell. The upper floor, so I learned during the day, was entirely caught much worse than us. The Shoki troop had been really raging there. Washing powder was mixed with coffee and cocoa powder and dumped on the floor. Cake, cookies, bread, etc. was torn and scattered on the floor. All purchases were made unusable.